Hey, long time no see everyone. This is Brandon Bias from chichichicken.com, back once again with the Photoshop tutorial. We had a request from one of our previous requestees, if that's even the right word. I'm sure you guys remember him from one of our other tutorials, Super Mr. Metallica. He gave us a couple text effects that he wanted us to make, and we actually decided to do one on his second image right here. But I'm actually not going to show you what that looks like because it actually looks better than what I was able to make it into on my own. But all in all, it turned out good. And here's what it looked like in the end. And as you can see, this actually has quite a bit going on in there. We got the word ponage in the middle, mostly because I couldn't think of a better word to use, and it's kind of fitting. And we've also got some shards of diamonds in the background, and we've got, you know, paint splatters and all kinds of crazy like coloring and spots, and just all of this together looks really cool. So let's go ahead and jump into this advanced tutorial, shall we? So let's just size it down just for kicks and start up our new document. I'm gonna start up a 1280 by 720 like usual. And instead of doing our usual black background, we're going to make a gradient. So we're going to change our foreground color to a dark grayish color, so maybe around there. And then our background color will be an even darker gray, so maybe somewhere around there. Just some dark gray colors, and we're going to turn those into a vertical gradient using our gradient tool. Just name that BG for now. And then we're going to make a new layer. And we're going to call this Spotlight. And then we're going to reset our foreground and background colors to white and black. And grab our brush tool. And we're just going to make it a nice big, maybe 800 pixel large brush right here. And I'm going to zoom out so I can put the brush towards the top center so that maybe only a quarter of the brush is overlapping the canvas. And give that a click, and we'll give us a nice little spotlight given onto our background right there. And we're going to make a new layer. We're just going to call this, we'll just call this a white light. And we're going to size down our brush to maybe 400 or 500 pixels or so. And just give that a little smack in the middle right there. And we're going to grab our move tool and transform our spotlight. And we're actually going to click and drag this bottom right corner out while holding Alt and Shift. I'm pretty sure that's Command and Option and Shift on a Mac, something along those lines. Just going to drag that out and bring this down to give that a little bit of a 3D look. Let's go ahead and drag these in holding Alt and Shift, maybe a little bit more down. And right there is actually looking okay. Okay, so we've got our two spotlights. Let's go ahead and add in our text. I'm just going to type in ponage. And if you want this font, I will definitely be putting a link in the description for you, because it's a pretty neat font and it's free, so why not use it, huh? Okay, so now that we've got our text typed out and it's in the center, let's go ahead and give it a little bit of a drop shadow. Let's just put this right there so we can see what we're doing. I'm gonna amp up the opacity to 100%, change the angle to 90 degrees, change the distance to 3 pixels and the size to 10 pixels. And that will give us a nice, just vertical, soft little drop shadow right there. And we're going to go to our bevel and emboss, change the depth to around 327%, change the size to 1 pixel, and soften it all the way to 16 pixels. Now we got a little bit of a bevel and emboss there. Then we're going to turn on our stroke, change the color to a gray. We'll just type in 727272, and that will give us a nice little gray. Change the position to center, and that should be okay right there. And I'm actually going to close that up and duplicate it, bring this below, change the opacity to about 20%, and then I'm going to zoom in to 100% and nudge over that duplicated ponage layer just so we get a little bit of a 3D feel to it. Alright, so now we've got our ponage the way we want it to be. Let's go ahead and add in our diamonds. And the way we're going to do that is actually make a custom brush. So let's go ahead and open up a new document. Let's make it maybe 400 by 400. And depending on the size of the diamonds that you want, and make it accordingly. We'll hit OK. And then go down here, we're just going to grab our polygon tool, make sure we're set to shape layers, 4 sides, and then we're going to change the color to that gray that we used before, 727272, hit OK. Now we're just going to click and drag from the middle till it fills pretty much the entire canvas and let go. And then we're going to grab our direct selection tool, and we're just going to manipulate these corners to go out to the top left and bottom right. And we're going to drag these corners in to make it that little diamond shape that we want. So maybe about, let's see, right there looks just about right there. So as soon as you've got this into a sort of diamond looking shape, go ahead and right click this layer and we're going to rasterize it. And we're going to make this into a brush preset. And we're just going to call this diamond. Boom. Now we can close out of this. We don't need it anymore. So let's go ahead and make this layer right here above our white layer. We'll call it diamonds. And then we'll head up to our brush tool. Make sure we're set to a white foreground color. I'm just going to go scroll down to the bottom because that's where our little diamond should be right there. And then if you open up your little brush panel over here, we're going to turn on the shape dynamics. And the settings for the shape dynamics that you're going to use are a 100% size jitter, control the pen pressure, minimum diameter 0%, angle jitter 100%, control off, roundness jitter 45%, control off, minimum roundness 1%. And then for scattering, we're going to turn that on. We're going to set the scatter to both axes at 135%, the control off, the count to 1, count jitter 100%, the control to fade with a setting of 1. And then just make sure airbrush and smoothing are check marked right there. And then we're just going to size down our brush to kind of fit the word ponage. Just click and drag. And then just kind of play with the size a little bit. Let's put a lot of smaller shards of diamonds around here. Makes it look a little bit nicer. Just boom, click around, boom, boom, boom. And maybe just one great big one, just for kicks. Boom. Alright. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and make a little bit of a shadow beneath the word ponage. But we're going to do that in a little bit of a bizarre way. Let's go ahead and go back to our default brush here. And then make it about the size of the word ponage. So I'm going to make it about 200 pixels big, kind of fits a little bit there. And we're going to make a new layer above the word ponage, and we're going to call this shadow. But the way we're going to do this is actually put in some colors. So I'm going to choose a green, just kind of paint on it right there. And we're going to swap over to maybe a yellow color. Just give it a little bit of a right there. Maybe add in some magenta. And then we'll just finish off the word with some red. But let's add some yellow between these two just for kicks. Okay, so we've got some random colors on there. Let's go ahead and give them a motion blur right there. And we're just going to set the angle to 0 and set the distance to something maybe like 90 pixels. And that will just kind of blur it left to right a little bit. And then we're just going to set the blend mode to vivid light. And that's got some craziness going on there. But we're going to mask this a little bit, so let's size down our brush. Give a little click there. Now we can size down our brush. Just kind of mask it over the word ponage, and then just get rid of any colors that are above it. And that's the effect that we should be getting right there. But we're actually gonna go ahead and move this up, so that's kind of overlaying the bottom of the word ponage a little bit. Let me actually mask this out just a little bit more. Just get that out of there. Alright, that's looking pretty good right there. So what we're going to do now that we've got these random colors below the word ponage, we're actually going to add an adjustment layer and make it a black and white adjustment layer. And what we're going to do is actually just kind of start decreasing these values to make these areas kind of a black. But as you play with these, you'll notice that sometimes it'll get a little bit too black, and sometimes they're not black enough. You kind of want the shards to show through a little bit, and just kind of play with this until you get settings that you kind of like how they look. So I'm just going to toy with these until I get something that I like. Okay, so I'm kind of liking how that looks. Granted, it's a little bit choppy here and there, but that's okay. I can always, redo the effect if I don't end up liking how it looks in the end. So let's go ahead and just close this up, and we're actually going to add the actual coloring on the word ponage real fast. Let's make a new layer, and we'll call it color. Bam. And then let's grab our brush again. Let's size it up a little bit more to about maybe 300 pixels. I'm going to let's try a light blue, kind of give a little right there. And let's see, what else should we do? Let's go to another magenta, paint that in. Bring in our yellows again. And then finish it off with a nice solid orange. Boom. Then we'll just change this blend mode to color. And it looks pretty decent right there, actually. Not too bad. But in any case, I need to blur this a little bit, so let's go give it a little bit of a Gaussian blur. 20 pixels will actually do just fine. If you do before and after, you'll see that it just kind of dampens the colors just a little bit, so they're not too overwhelming. They just blend a little bit better. And we'll hit OK. Go back to our move tool because I like having a little arrow right there. And the next step is to actually merge all of these together into one layer. But to kind of make sure that I have all of these to keep, I'm actually going to do a little shortcut that I learned that's Control-Alt-Shift-E. On a Mac, I'm sure that's like something along the lines of Command-Option-Shift-E, something around those lines. But if that doesn't work for you, then you can always just kind of right-click and merge visible or flatten image, something along those lines. We'll still get the job done, you just lose all of your layers if you need to go back and start over or something like that. So I'm actually going to call this layer sharpen. Actually, no. We're going to reduce noise. So with that, we're going to go to filter, noise, reduce noise. And these are the settings you're going to use. We're going to use a strength of 10, preserve details 100%, reduce the color noise by 15%, sharpen the details by 60%, and remove JPEG artifacts. And we'll just hit OK, and then we'll sharpen things up a little bit, make them a little bit more interesting. And then we're going to duplicate this layer twice. We're going to turn this layer off and go to this layer. We're going to call this blur, because we're actually going to go to filter, blur, motion blur. We're going to set the angle to 90 degrees and the distance to 17 pixels, and we'll hit OK. And we'll set that to, let's see, I believe it's hard light that we need to set this to. There we go. And that just adds a little bit of contrast as well as that nice little motion blur effect to make it look a little bit more interesting. And then this layer we're going to turn back on, and we're going to call this sketch. And with that, we're going to go to, actually before we do anything, we need to make sure our colors in the bottom left hand corner are set to white as your foreground color and black as your foreground color. Otherwise you're going to end up with something that looks really weird. So anyway, making sure you've got those colors, we're going to go to filter, sketch, reticulation. And as soon as that's up, you can see we've got this interesting effect going on here. Just make sure your density is set to 50, your foreground to 0, your background to 5, and this is the general effect that you should get. And we'll hit OK. And then we're just going to set that to color dodge. And that should be it for that layer. Let's go ahead and add in our paintbrush. And then we're actually going to go ahead and set this to overlay, and then we're going to give this a little bit of a mask so that, let's see. Okay, so with all that, I believe you should be done with this entire project here. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, but no stupid questions like how do I change my foreground color? That's just silly. But in any case, This was a lot of fun. I'm actually glad I made this tutorial, and I'm looking forward to more requests from you guys and giving you something else to work on. So thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time.